I see these signs that time turn off every light we all put. And every fire sky.
Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. It's 23 minutes after 6 o'clock. And this morning, inside your spotlight, and now we're looking for solutions to crime. Kimberly D'Souza has more.
Now, on the heels of the recently held crime symposium and the email bomb threat to several schools in Trinidad and Tobago on Friday, we continue to discuss solutions to crime and violence. And so joining us this morning is criminologist Dr. Malisa Neptune-Figaro. Dr. Neptune-Figaro, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No, appreciate you being here because I want to borrow from your knowledge, of course, you being a criminologist and also a lecturer at the University of the West Indies. And so we've been hearing a lot about crime and violence. Some people are using it interchangeably, of course. So my first question to you is crime and violence. Is there a difference between the two?
Yes, there's a difference. Violence is a part of crime in terms of harming somebody else. So we have laws to protect individuals from inflicting harm on a person or even threats of harm. It could be violence. So there are non-violent crimes, but we are definitely more interested in the violent crimes. So it's a part of the criminogenic behavior of violence, yes.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that. What exactly can be defined as a violent crime?
So a violent crime is basically what we usually discuss and is always the forefront. It is the harming of somebody. And most times you talk about the physical harms, you talk about murders, you talk about rapes, you talk about even robberies because that's invasive. It's inflicting harm, but also it can involve just fights, like physical fights. And so it's not only just physically harming somebody, but also the threat of harming. So assault, the threat of assault, and now we're kind of considering bullying as a form of violence. And we could go even further and talk about the cyber and digital world, where we have violence inflicted on individuals through digital means. So it's inflicting harm on somebody, regardless of if it's physical, but the threat of physically harming somebody as well.
And Doctor, what would you say are some of the main reasons for the rise in violent crime that we've been seeing? For example, we've heard people have given the argument about poverty in society. Of course, during the crime symposium, it was also mentioned that social media might be a driver of that. Do you see these things contributing to what we're seeing playing out in society right now?
So within our context and our environment, I think crime is so multidimensional. It has so many reasons and so many facets for causation of crime. And it also stems from, yes, poverty and socioeconomic situations. So we have this discussion about instrumental crimes where people are economically deprived. So poverty and impoverishment can causes a lot of the criminality we see, but it goes beyond because there are a lot of impoverished people. That's the explanation, right? A lot of impoverished people who don't commit crime. So what is the difference? And so we start to think about things deeper than the economic system. I'll jump into the social media, but the culture that we are creating within our society, where we have communities and families and friends that accept criminality as a way of getting by economically. And why is that? So we have to go deeper into acceptability of crime, people accepting crime as something that is normal. It's normative at this point in time. And yes, social media, not only social media, but also we talk about entertainment, music, some things you see on shows. I think these are contributing factors, but the mere fact that it's becoming acceptable within the institutions, it's influencing especially young persons within our community. So socioeconomic is one reason, but it goes deeper than the socioeconomic embedded in our society. It goes beyond poverty and impoverished persons.
So then how do we get to that acceptable level? Because this morning we were talking about in terms of even when we look at homicides, sometimes we think about homicide of just being another one. But then how do we move forward to it being something that's ghastly or something that's surprising to something that's accepted as the norm?
I think it starts from how we are dealing with things. So we have to look at the different institutions that come into play and the importance. I think one of the major issues that we have in tackling crime and criminality is putting so much emphasis on the criminal justice system. And when I say the criminal justice system, I talk about the police, I talk about the prison system, I talk about the judiciary, the court system. I think it goes beyond that. I think looking at social services, how are we treating with conflict? Why are we aggressive? So just not only the social services, but also mental health. Are we dealing with aggression in positive ways? We have to also look at male and masculinity, the expectations of men in society. So it goes beyond our criminal justice system, and I think we put so much focus on what is the police doing and what is happening with the court system, why they're taking so long with cases. And yes, I think in the medium to short term, these are issues that we have to tackle. But introducing why violence is becoming such a norm and culturally accepted in specific homes and communities, I think it goes beyond that. It goes to looking at community, the connectivity of community, our social aspect of things. How do we socialize our young persons? What positive influence or role modeling do we have in these communities? Is it more negative than positive? What about peer influence? Is the community coming together to form these informal sanctions? Who's saying what? Are they fearful of coming out and doing something about it? It takes an entire village right now, and I agree with my colleagues where you talk about all hands on deck. So we need from the social services, social development, we need education system to kind of also play a pivotal role in understanding and treating with this idea of crime and why it is becoming so acceptable and embedded in our society, or the way we think.
You mentioned education. How can education be used as well? Is it simply about educating children about what to look forward to or look to whenever they are looking to make positive decisions? How can we use education as well as a driving force to decrease crime and what we're seeing in society at present day?
So education is important, is a very imperative factor in terms of how we instill knowledge in the minds of young persons. And young persons really and truly are an important aspect. So if you look at the age group in which crimes are being committed, you see the scale, younger and younger persons are getting involved. So the education system is one of the main entry or main pathways in which you can inform them differently. So if you live in a community where all you know is crime and to commit crimes or violence and aggression, the education system could teach differently. And it will hold a lot for individuals within these institutions, educational institutions, to instill these types of positive thinking. So there needs to be some sort of support for the Ministry of Education. So workshops dealing with, especially now that we have a lot of school-based violence, telling students this is not accurate behavior, having conflict resolution, opening up workshops. So we have a lot of these things going on in schools, but how often is it happening? Police intervention is always necessary, but we have to look at the other end of the stick where we have to inform them about right and wrong and moral values. And also going beyond that and looking at collaborating with other ministries to ensure that what is going on in the home doesn't filter into the school system. So you see a lot of children have aggression issues, they're always in fights, but we don't know the situations that they are facing when they go back home. So in addition to just the education system, we need to actually have collaborations with other ministries and other organizations to actually help individuals and students kind of foster more positive behavior. So in addition to the education part of it, we need to add a little bit more services to cater to the needs and on some of the challenges that some students are facing.
Yeah.
And it's a heavy burden for the education system to bear.
Yeah, because I was just about to say, Doc, I mean, you mentioned that partnership that the ministry has to have with other ministries. That is happening now. When we saw the increase, or what some can term the increase in school violence, we saw that they were partnering with the Ministry of Social Development, for example. They were partnering with the TTPS to know that they have the community police at certain schools. I mean, but what else is needed? Do you think some of the workshops need to be part of the curriculum? Is it because it's separate from the curriculum they are not getting as much as they should from the workshops that are currently taking place?
I think it's as an overburdened system. the range of issues that we have to contend with students and the limited resources is something that we have to take into consideration. So I think when we look at the ministries and what they're doing, I think having more hands on board. So the Ministry of Education could only do so much, and I think they're doing a good job in terms of they could do better, but they're doing a good job in terms of hosting these workshops. But they still have to teach children.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a lot for them to it's a lot for them to handle on their own, and so do we have a parallel system to what teachers do versus like what else the Ministry of Education do? We need a separate sector within the Ministry of Education where we tackle issues of social services. Do we expand on what we have in terms of the school counseling, peer counseling? I, I just think at this point it is so much for specific schools to handle that we probably need a parallel type of organization or system to assist the teachers and those professionals within these schools because it's a lot. It's a lot for them to do within the 7 to 8 hours they have students and expect them to also teach students and garner their minds and understanding and provide knowledge. So we probably need to actually have additional staff and more resources placed into the school system based on what we already have.
Yeah, I know that you had mentioned some at the top, Doc, but if it is, you can just remind us as well some of the solutions that you were talking about. So you just mentioned that parallel system that maybe we need to bring into the school system. You mentioned a stronger community in terms of more community outreach programs, workshops to target the youth. What other sort of solutions we can see to tackle this problem at present?
Well, I would think long term, I would look at mental health. Going into the communities, having discussions with a lot of young persons, the trauma of just losing family members to gang violence or just violence is traumatic, and how they deal with it at this point, a lot of them, in especially specific communities, is reprisal killings, and we're not treating with them mentally. I remember one time I had a conversation about a boy whose brother was killed in front of him. They expected him to go to school the next week, absolutely normal. And I think maybe because he come from a specific community where it's plagued with violence, and so we need to treat with individuals' mental health and how they deal with aggression, not only in the schools but even adults. We could just see the road traffic behavior where people are so aggressive, and just to get a parking space, it seems to be coming into fights and arguments for very frivolous issues. And so I think one of the things we have to look at is also the psychological issues a lot of people in our society are facing, and that to me is a lot. But also we have to look at the social service. Socioeconomic is still a big issue when you talk to young persons in economically deprived areas. They don't have much leverage in terms of opportunities for employment. And so I remember just talking to them, and it's just like maybe a little job on the outside, people who are willing to hire them. So and the fact that they are stigmatized because of where they come from. Maybe this is something we have to look at, creating more opportunities for young persons. And so they'll be less willing to join gangs, less willing to go this route about in criminality. These are just a few things, but I think one of the other issues is role modeling, mentorship, having positive things in negative communities. So sporting events, community events, bring back where the community feels like, there's a sense of togetherness, and they don't have to feel fear. So maybe just having programs or just the community being able to just have positive influence, rather than having more negative persons influencing peers and groups of people and young persons within these communities. And
Yeah.
those are the three on top of my head, but there's so much more that we could do. But it's really a lot, is extensive. We have to have a comprehensive plan, short, medium, and long-term plan to think about what is necessary and needs to be done to curb or mitigate this crime situation that's going on in Trinidad.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Neptune-Figaro, let me thank you so much for joining us this morning. Definitely a lot that you gave us to unpack. And I hope that the ones who need to listen, and of course, being average citizens, you and I, can also, take what you said and try to see how best we can be exemplars in our own communities. So thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Have a good one. And that was criminologist and lecturer at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Malisa Neptune-Figaro, just giving us some medium, short-term, long-term solutions to violent crimes that we're seeing in the society. The Now Morning Show, but stay with us because up next we take your phone calls. Remember, our number is 622-4010. Call us. Tell us what would you suggest as a crime reduction measure. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. Stay with us.
She told me people never